want to talk to you about something you might be thinking. You heard about the challenge. You registered, or maybe you've been thinking about registering. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's a voice that says, 5 days. Is 5 days actually going to change anything? I hear that voice because I understand that voice. You've tried things before. You have put effort in with your doodle. You've been hopeful before, and the results didn't match the hope. So, why would this be different? I am not going to tell you that 5 days will change everything. I am going to tell you what 5 days actually does. And then you can decide whether that's worth showing up for. I'm Kring Gearhart, founder of the Doodle Pro and your host. This is episode 95 of the Doodle Pro podcast. Let's talk about what actually shifts. First, let's start with what the 5 days are not, because I think clarity here is more useful than enthusiasm. 5 days will not give you a perfectly trained doodle. It will not fix 8 years of patterns overnight. It will not mean your dog comes to you every single time from the backyard, or that the doorbell no longer sends them into orbit, or that the park becomes a place of serene off-leash recall. Anyone who tells you 5 days produces a perfect dog is selling you something I'm not interested in selling. What 5 days does is something more important than that. 5 days shifts what you believe is possible. And I want to make the case that this shift is actually the most valuable thing that can happen in any training journey. Because what you believe about your dog determines everything you try, everything you stick with, and everything you give up on. A doodle parent who believes their dog is just this way, just chaotic, just selective about listening, just wired to lose their mind at the park, will never find the consistency required to build a real system. Because why would you invest in something you don't believe can change? But a doodle parent who has seen their dog respond differently, even once, even briefly, even in one small moment, that person has evidence, and evidence changes everything. 5 days gives you evidence. Let me paint you a picture, not a generic picture, like specific pictures, because your doodle is not a generic dog. If your doodle has been running the household for years, you've been living with the chaos for so long, it might have become your normal. The barking at the door, the greetings that send guests running, the way your doodle chooses when to listen based on what else is on the offer. You've tried things. None of them stuck. You've quietly started to wonder, is this just how your dog is? Day 5 is not a perfectly behaved dog. Day 5 is the moment you realize this is not just how your dog is, that the pattern is clear, that the pattern makes sense, and that you now have the beginning of something that can actually change it. That shift from this is just my dog to this is a pattern I understand changes the next 5 years of your relationship. If your doodle's a teenager, 14 months old, that cuteness of teddy bear puppyhood replaced by what I can only describe as a doodle with their own fully formed furry agenda, the 11 p.m. zoomies aren't funny anymore. The jumping is getting out of hand. You tried the things that worked at 8 months and they stopped working. You're not sure what happened. What happened is adolescence amplified every pattern you accidentally installed in puppyhood. Day 5 gives you the framework for why that happened and the first piece of the system that starts to redirect it. If your doodle just came home, they're 8 weeks old, maybe 2.5 weeks later, and you're already Googling things at 11 o'clock at night, the biting, the energy, the accidents, the complete inability to settle even when you know they're tired. Day 5 is the moment you realized you are not behind. You caught this early. The families who catch it early have an easier road. Not because their doodle's easier, but there's fewer patterns to undo. You're at the beginning of this. That's actually an extraordinary place to be. And if you're someone who registered from England or British Columbia or Spain or New Zealand, I see you. The challenge is live at 7 p.m. Mountain Time in the US, and I know that's not your time zone, but the replay is in your portal and it'll be yours until April 29th. You are in this community. You belong in this room, and welcome to Doodle Nation. However, you're joining us, we are glad you're here. I want to tell you about a specific moment, the kind of moment that happens during Challenge Week. The doodle that usually is darting out the door without looking back. And instead of trying to wrangle them or get their attention as you've done 100 times, you do one small thing differently, something you learned on day 2, and your doodle checks in. Not because they finally decided to listen, not because you finally said it right, because something shifted in how the interaction was structured, because you gave them a reason to check in with you before darting out. That moment is not the finish line. That moment is evidence. Evidence that your dog is not broken. Evidence that the pattern can change. Evidence that the thing you thought is just how they are is actually something different. Something that responds to the right approach. That moment is what day 5 feels like. Not perfection, evidence. And evidence is everything. Here is something I want you to hear if you've tried things before and felt like you failed. You are not starting from zero. You're starting from experience. You know what does not work. You know what your doodle responds to and what they do not. You know the moments they fall apart and the environments that are the trickiest. You know your dog better than any trainer that could meet them for the first time. The puppy class, the YouTube videos, that membership, the expensive trainer, none of that was wasted, even if it didn't work. All of it is data, and data in the right system becomes an asset. The challenge does not ask you to forget what you know and start over. It gives you a framework that makes sense of what you already know, a sequence that takes the pieces you've been collecting and gives them somewhere to go. The families who make the most progress in Challenge Week are not the ones with the most perfectly trained dogs. They're the ones who've been trying, who've been paying attention, who know their dog well, enough to realize when something is actually different. If you're a doodle nerd and you're still here, still listening, still trying, you are. That's you. That's not a liability. That's your greatest asset in this work. I want to tell you something about why this challenge exists. I have a trainer friend who once confided in me that she was glad that I work with doodles, so she doesn't have to. A lot of trainers feel this way. Doodles are a lot. They're fast and social and opinionated, and they'll find every gap in a system that was not built for them. I chose them anyway, not because they're easy, because they're extraordinary when they have the right system. I have spent 50,000 hours specifically working with doodles, not general dog training with some doodles mixed in. Specifically these dogs across 25 plus crosses, dealing with all the different problems. I've met the backyard barker, the park disappear, the door greeter who sends the guests running, and the dog who's been doing this for 8 years. I've met the new puppy parent who's 4 days in and already calling me exhausted. I've met the doodle who needed the barrier in puppy class and the one who was the star student who forgot everything at the park. I chose all of them on purpose. And this challenge is the system I wish every doodle parent in Doodle Nation had access to on day 1. Not because it solves everything in 5 days, because it starts the right thing. It builds the foundation that everything else can grow from. Your doodle has been ready for the right system longer than you know. The challenge starts April 20th. The pre-party is Friday, April 17th, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. That's where we kick everything off, meet each other, and there's some prizes worth showing up for. 5 days, completely free. built for Doodle parents that have registered from Colorado and British Columbia and England and Spain and New Zealand and everywhere in between. The replays will be in your portal and yours until April 29th. If the voice in the back of your head is saying, 5 days can't change anything, I want to invite you to come prove it wrong. Not for me, for the doodle in your life right now. Registration is at thedoodlepro.com/challenge. I'll throw it in the show notes. And if you want a 2-minute head start before we begin, the Trust Fund Puppy Quiz is at thedoodlepro.com/trustfundpuppy. It tells you exactly where your doodle lands before we even start. I'm Corinne Gearhart. This is the Doodle Pro podcast, where we celebrate how doodles are different, wonderfully so. I'll see you Friday.